At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
Melinda Guzman is a woman of many roles. Feared litigator, respected businesswoman, international advisor on trade and U.S.-Mexico relations, corporate board member, and expert on governance issues. She's also an activist for education, a wife, and a mother. Ms. Guzman was the first college graduate in her family and has been a trailblazer ever since. Winner of the Latina Leadership Award by Latino Leaders magazine, and the Luminary Award by the National Association of Women Business Owners, Ms. Guzman joins us today in a special edition of Studio Sacramento as a part of PBS's national project honoring the women who make America called makers. Welcome, Melinda Guzman.
Thank you, Scott, for having me.
So what makes a woman a maker? What is it that makes one successful in the field that she chooses to pursue?
You know, my father was originally from Mexico. He's from a little land grant community called an ejido. And it's really what he told me, which was you got to work harder than anyone else, you got to love your family, and you have to dream. And those three things should help you rise to the top. And I guess the fourth thing being that you want to give back and you want to help others. So what makes a person succeed, hopefully, is a combination of those four things by serving as a model to others, working hard to get to whatever those dreams might take you.
And you talk about serving as a model to others. Who was your model? Who inspired you?
Well, I mentioned him. My father, to begin with, Melinda Guzman. He was from a little land grant community in ejido in northern Mexico. Never went to school. Moved when he was 17 to the United States, worked in agriculture, which is a fancy word for farm working.
Okay.
Became a railroad mechanic for 42 years. He was a union man, he was an officer, and he worked harder than anyone else, and he taught me so much about life and life lessons. His sister, a mother of 11, she worked in the fields. She picked more than any man, had 11 kids, sent them to college, that type of thing.
Give me a sense of, from your father, those stories in terms of what did you learn from his time in the fields and then becoming a railroad worker? What were the lessons that he shared?
Well, respect for one. I remember when I was 8 and people were visiting and I'd go offer a coffee. Would you like some coffee? And he'd say, no. You don't offer someone coffee, you bring it to them. Shake my hand, and if I didn't have a firm enough handshake, 5, he told me, you have to have a firm handshake. If you have time to go to the movies in the summer, or you think you want to go work in the fields, is what he told me, you have time to read a book. So he didn't let us work in the fields. He didn't let us work in the packing sheds. He wanted us to read and to open our minds.
Now you had 2 sisters as well, right?
There's 4 of us in total.
Oh, 4.
No
okay.
brothers, all 4 sisters. We all went to UC Davis. And the only thing my parents knew about Davis is that there was a railroad depot there. And our compadre, the godfather of one of my sisters, was the janitor in the library at UC Davis. With that knowledge, we were allowed to go to UC Davis because it was a railroad town. And our area in the library was going to be cleaner than anyone else's.
Now, from the modest circumstances you grew up with, was it a culture shock for you going to the university and starting to move into the world of being a professional attorney?
Absolutely. You know, where I grew up, it was a 2-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. People had to walk through my bedroom in order to get to the bathroom. I remember driving to the local Shell station with big containers so that we can bring water to drink and cook our food. When we got to UC Davis, it was a whole new world. And when I became an attorney at the largest law firm in Sacramento, my father was embarrassed to come because he didn't want to embarrass me.
And you were the first female partner at that firm, Deep & Brock?
Deep & Brock, Wolf, Plant & Hannigan,
Okay.
which was the oldest and largest law firm. I was the only Hispanic woman ever there, and one of the first Mexican-American partners.
Let's talk about that. You've had plenty of firsts in your time, including some within your own community. The first female president or chair of the California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and others as well. What's that like to carry?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity as well as responsibility. You want to do, as my father say, work harder than anyone else. We can't afford to make mistakes.
Is it true? It's always been said that with women or people of color or anyone who is not considered to be part of the upper class, that you've got to work harder, be smarter, stay up longer. Is that always true?
Absolutely. I could not afford to not pass the bar the first time at Deep & Brock. For example, we had a class of 16 attorneys. Most of them were in the top 10% or better of their class. I wasn't, but I worked harder, and that's one of the reasons they hired me. I couldn't afford not to pass. When I passed the bar, that was a significant milestone. I passed on the first time. So you have to work hard, you have to work harder than others. We are creating a path for the next Melinda, for the next woman or Hispanic who's going to walk through that door.
When did you first know that you were going to be successful?
You know, different things come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I worked hard in school, and I did the around the world games with math, and I always worked hard so I can win, and I did. I got admitted to law school. I passed the bar the first time.
But when did you know that it was going to turn the corner, that this was going to happen for you? I mean, not just success, but massive success.
I will say that it was right before I became partner, the first 6 years of my experience at Deep & Brock, I was retained to represent venture capital funds in Sacramento to collect on bad debt. These were funds that were coming in from Washington, D.C., Chicago, and otherwise. And I knew I had it. Because I didn't offer them just a litigation plan, a cookie cutter, let's depose some people, this, that, and the other. We took some assets into receivership and sold them, and over the course of a year, you know, we were successful through them. When their opposing parties wanted to hire me, I knew I had made a difference.
That you were onto something.
I was onto something.
Now, since that time, you've gone on, you serve on a number of corporate boards, Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco. You sat on the board of a publicly traded company, PacWest.
PacWest Telecom.
And you chair a board for the State Department of Insurance on supplier diversity and board governance.
Insurance Diversity Task Force, that's correct.
Right. What's important when someone like you steps into a boardroom and is transacting business for these large corporations? What's important for you to remember and for others like you to remember?
Well, I'll tell you what people say of Melinda, and this comes from an early survey that was done at Deep & Brock by our clients. And I remember being really nervous about the results. But one of my clients said, aggressive, enthusiastic, prepared approach. I was surprised that they captured that about me, but that's what I have to do every time I walk into a courtroom, a boardroom, or otherwise. You got to be prepared, you got to be engaged, you have to speak hopefully with some level of contribution, you have to have good governance and think about ethics and integrity, because I am creating a path for someone else to follow.
But are you? And the reason I'm asking you the question is because so many times a person is so happy just to be in the room that they think that that's all that they have to do. You're shaking your head. Does that mean?
No, that is not enough. Usually I'm the first. I've sat on the Federal Home Loan Bank Board of Directors for the last 7 years as the only woman. I'm not the first, but I'm the only one in 7 years. We just elected a new member. I was the only Hispanic woman on the Board of Trustees to the California State University. I've been the only one at the table many times, the only woman and the only Hispanic when I served on the Pac West Board of Directors, Telecom, a publicly traded company. So sometimes you're the first, sometimes you're the only. Regardless, you are creating an image of an experience for the other directors and for the company. And in order to perform well, you need to be aggressive, enthusiastic, and prepared in order to succeed.
Recently, John Rogers, who runs Ariel Capital Management, a suite of billion-dollar investment funds, was in Sacramento. And he asked a question of everyone about, what do you think is the responsibility if you get to the highest levels of business, politics, government, in terms of what you're supposed to do once you get there? And other than those requirements that you just mentioned, what is the difference between good and great with regards to making a difference as a trailblazer?
Well, you're a little bit of a change agent. You do mentor your colleagues on the board, the company, as well as others to inspire them to continue. You do want to encourage others. One of my favorite awards in my life has been from the National Association of Women Business Owners. They gave me the Luminary Award for lighting the way for others. I was happy to receive that because I do spend a lot of time talking to other women, other Latinos, other business owners. I try to encourage people to consider boards, get the right training. I do teach governance courses for all companies, but including nonprofits. But what makes the difference in a good leader versus a great leader is someone who can help teach and train others and inspire others. And it's part of what my dad said, that dream to always aspire to do more, not for yourself, but for others. We know that if we bring one student in from a family, for example, you're going to bring others from that family, from the neighborhood, from the community, and have an impact. That's what we're doing when you put a Melinda or a Syfax on a board. You're having a greater impact on the company, on the community, on the state, on the nation.
So you sat on the board of California State University as well as California community colleges, and you were referred to, you'd go to all of the Hispanic graduations and were kind of known as Mama Melinda. What did your presence representing the CSU Board of Trustees or the California community colleges, what did that mean to those young people? How was that interaction?
It was life-changing for me. I remember
Really?
The first year my father had Alzheimer's and I did 3 graduations in a row. You do these graduations every season. And I went from Sacramento, Monterey to Fresno. Fresno State has one of the largest Hispanic Latino graduations. I was tired, I got in, I walked into the room. There were 12,000 people in that sports arena.
Wow.
And when I walked in, they were all graduates, all families or whatever. Small one in Calexico for San Diego State. Again, you know, maybe about 400 students, but all families and friends. When I stand up, I represent their family, their hope, a symbol of some hope for the future that I, like one of them, can graduate, can get a doctorate degree, and can serve on one of these boards. Family members would come to me crying, thanking me, giving me respect, because I represent some hope for them and for their children.
When you go into these boardrooms, these universities, these investment banking meetings, does it ever end for you? Have you arrived where it is that you don't have to work or struggle anymore? Because that's what it kind of sounds like it's all gravy now. What's the reality?
Well, the reality is I'm always in there as Melinda, the attorney, and many other hats. The reality is if I'm not prepared and if I can't contribute, I'm not a player on the boardroom. So you do have to prepare and extra, especially when I'm the only woman on a bank board. I need to be very prepared. And of course, we haven't made it. There aren't other women on the table. There aren't other Hispanics around the table at all, still on that bank board, for example. And so I have to always work hard, impress others that I'm contributing wherever I am, because some may still see you as a woman or a Hispanic.
Does that also happen, though, even within your own community? You know, you've served, you know, with the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as their general counsel. You've, you know, done all of this trade work. But is sexism limited to just, you know, the general population, or do you still have these same struggles even within your own community?
I want to say we have it a little bit. It's not as much as one would think when it comes to the business circles and legal circles, because at the end of the day, we're all still trying to achieve the same thing, some equity in education, employment, and business opportunities. So I want to say, to a certain extent, it's much less in those circles because we have a greater agenda that does include gender equity, but it includes a greater equity for the entire community.
So when you also do work overseas as well, and you've gotten to meet some luminaries over time and work with them, and in particular, U.S.-Mexico relations seems to be an important part of your portfolio. Why such a big focus on Mexico?
That little ejido community that my dad was from, you know, these are ejidos, they're land grants, they're like 6 blocks worth of, you know, Save the Children type commercials. Not many people leave those communities. I've worked with Hispanic Chambers of Commerce for over 25 years. I've had an opportunity to work at local, state, national, and international levels. I have traveled with, for example, President Vicente Fox of Mexico. I've taken him to Puerto Rico to talk about the Caribbean, to talk about global trade practices, to talk about the importance of the Hispanic business market in America from a global perspective and what it means not only to this nation's economy, but to the world's economy. So it is important. We know the numbers of Latinos in California and beyond, and from a worldwide perspective, it's an important impact to the economy.
How do you reconcile all of that work, traveling transnationally, and all the other work you do? How do you achieve that work-family balance? Tell us a little bit about that.
I have a very supportive family, always have, but we make a priority. Again, it's part of that giving back to the community and to family in general. So I try to jog and I go shopping at odd hours, but it's part of the fabric of my family that at least I'm going to be working and giving to the community. It's part of who we are as a family.
Now, you have a daughter and a new grandchild.
I have a new grandson,
right.
Andres.
And as your daughter has watched you over her years growing up, what do you hope that she's taken away from your example?
The same lessons that my dad taught me, of course. I want her to love family and culture and working hard. My daughter, as you may know, is African American, Japanese, and Mexican. What I want her...
So she is California then.
She's definitely California. I want her and others to take away what I think is important. You know, we live in the United States of America, and that name has important symbols in it. Unity, you know, states to me means governance and ethics. And America symbolizes the independence and the opportunity that this nation brings. I want her to walk away knowing that she can do whatever she wants to do, that she can be a leader in her own right, whatever she defines, and that this country provides many opportunities from which to build, not just for herself, but for others.
When you were starting out your career, you didn't have much of a path to follow, and you, being first in your family, had to take it forward. What do you wish that you knew back then that you know today?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is I owned like 2 suits that I wore every day with a different blouse. But what did I want to know? I knew growing up that there was doctors, lawyers, and teachers. What I didn't know is that world of information that you learn by reading magazines or watching the news and doing some of the things that people take for granted. I didn't know that there were many other career opportunities or choices available that we could choose from to have an impact. So if I were going to start this all over again, I'd know more about reading. I'd do some of the things that simply weren't a part of our culture at home. And I would know the world's opportunities that are available to people. And so it's just a matter of perception and exposure.
It sounds like this theme keeps coming back in this conversation to education and what education can mean for transformation. What do you see as the promise of education as we're evaluating at so many different levels what the future of education is?
Education is California's economic opportunity and the nation's opportunity for growth and development. So as I said earlier, if you educate one person in a family, others will follow. And education, I owe everything to my parents and to my credentials, my education, in terms of opening any opportunities to allow me to become an advocate, an educator, an attorney, and beyond. So if we educate more, I mean, we already know that we're going to have to import college graduates to help sustain our economy. Just imagine what we can do if we educate more high school graduates instead of the 52% approximately that we graduate from the Latino community. If we send them to college, if we graduate them from college, we won't need to import anyone. We have them within our own boundaries. And really, as my dad said, you got to dream. And he always wanted me and encouraged me and my sisters to create, to always set goals and standards. He didn't know what that meant, but he wanted us to dream. And so I'm not done. I don't know what I'm going to do in the future, but I'm not done.
That was actually, you stole my next question, which is what's next?
You know, I'm not quite 50, so I'm not there yet. I've been an attorney. This is my 25th year as an attorney. I have been involved with the chambers for all these years. I sit as a director for the Federal Home Loan Bank, as you know, and I've sat actually on 2 of the state's governing boards. I look forward to continuing my service as an attorney in some capacity, working with other both nonprofit and private boards.
What would you say are the big issues that if time was just plentiful for you, what would you be working on?
Education and economic development. Business is such a key to paying for the necessities in our state and in our nation. I love business and I love the opportunities that exist. We are creating a new market and a new global market as we speak. And imagine we, in terms of whether it's Latinos or African Americans, weren't necessarily part of that play decades ago. We are now. And so it's going to be a great opportunity to help create a new global market with new thinkers around the table.
So immigration is a hot burning issue right now. What do you hope is the outcome? Actually, let me take that back. How do you think that this subject should be discussed as our national lawmakers are trying to contemplate what comes next?
I think they need to be realistic about what immigration policies mean. You know, I am an American citizen with constitutional rights throughout the United States and beyond, right? You lose your constitutional rights at an international border, and yet we can go into the state of Arizona and they think that they would allow me to lose my rights by traveling into their state. I think that we need to be practical about the people we invite to work here, directly or indirectly. We need to create that path of citizenship to allow people to not only come work so that we can enjoy the fruits of their labor, but so that we don't separate families, we don't separate children from their parents, and we can respect people's contributions not only to our economy, to society. So we need to keep safety and security measures in mind, of course, but we already know what the answer is.
What frustrates you most about the current debate as it stands today?
We get stalemated every other day. So there have been too many stalemates and not enough decisions made. The decisions, the different paths are pretty common. They're pretty similar, the options. It's about leadership, on all sides of this aisle so that we can finally make some decisions to create that path that I think is necessary at this time in our history.
So in our final moments, I want to ask you, with all of the accomplishments that you've had and all of the different sectors you've touched, what do you want to be Melinda Guzman's legacy?
I love my work with education. You know, I'm a business person first and foremost, and I'm an attorney in everything I do. I'm an advocate, I'm a mouthpiece. But it is true that the things that you touch the most that can grow are the kids. So my opportunity to help keep those doors open, to educate more students, is an important legacy, I think, not only for myself, but for the state. So everything that we can do to help with education is important. At the same time, you know, the economic development is important,
Okay.
and because it gives us that opportunity.
All right, and we're going to have to leave it there. Melinda Guzman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Scott, for having me.
That's our show. Thanks to Melinda Guzman, and thanks to you for watching. For Studio Sacramento, I'm Scott Syfax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.